Welcome everyone. You've got the C215 OA exam coming up and you want to fully prepare for it. Well, we're going to help you with it. You'll find C215 OA questions and answers on our website, entirely free. We know these exams are stressful, so we made our guides and practice questions free for you. With over 100 plus success stories, we have proven our videos will help you pass your exam on the first attempt. In this video, we will cover questions from quality management, capacity analysis, process design, supply chain, operations planning. So, let's get started.
1. A manufacturing plant notices a recurring defect in one product line and wants to identify every possible root cause before choosing a fix. Which quality tool would best help the team organize and categorize all potential causes of this specific defect into a visual structure? A. Pareto chart. B. Control chart. C. Cause and effects diagram. D. Run chart. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, C. Cause and effect diagram. Explanation: option C is correct because a cause and effect diagram, also called a fishbone diagram, visually organizes all potential causes of a problem into categories, making root cause identification systematic and thorough. Option A is incorrect because a Pareto chart ranks problems by frequency or impact to show which issues matter most, but it does not map the underlying causes of a single recurring defect. Option B is incorrect because a control chart monitors process variation over time to detect whether a process is statistically stable, not to brainstorm or categorize the causes of product defects. Option D is incorrect because a run chart displays data trends over a time period to help spot patterns, but does not organize or categorize the possible causes behind a specific recurring defect. Alright, let's get into a tool you will absolutely see on the exam, the cause and effect diagram, also called the fishbone diagram. When a manufacturing plant has a recurring defect, the first instinct might be to fix the most obvious cause, but that can backfire if the real root cause is something else entirely. A cause and effect diagram forces the team to slow down and map out every possible cause of a specific problem, organized into categories like materials, methods, machines, manpower, measurements, and environment. The result looks like a fish skeleton. The defect is the head, and the bones branching off are the cause categories. Now, why not a Pareto chart? Because a Pareto chart ranks problems by frequency. It tells you which causes matter most, but only after you already know what those causes are. A control chart? That monitors whether a process is stable over time, not why defects happen. A run chart? It spots trends in data over time, but it does not organize causes into categories. The fishbone is your brainstorming tool. It captures everything before you prioritize anything. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When a question says identify all possible causes or organize causes into categories, that is pointing straight at the cause and effect diagram. Quick recall hook: fishbone equals find every bone of the problem. 2. After listing all possible causes of a packaging failure using a fishbone diagram, the quality team now needs to determine which 2 or 3 causes are responsible for the majority of defects. Which tool helps them focus corrective efforts on the most impactful causes first? A. Pareto chart. B. Scatter diagram. C. Flowchart. D. Histogram. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, A. Pareto chart. Explanation: option A is correct because a Pareto chart applies the 80-20 rule, ranking causes by frequency or impact so the team can concentrate corrective efforts on the few causes creating the majority of defects. Option B is incorrect because a scatter diagram shows the relationship between 2 variables to detect correlations, but does not rank multiple defect causes by their frequency or relative impact on overall quality. Option C is incorrect because a flowchart maps the sequential steps in a process to identify where problems may occur, but it does not rank or prioritize the individual causes of a known defect. Option D is incorrect because a histogram displays the distribution of a single dataset across intervals, which helps see spread and central tendency, but does not rank causes by their contribution to defects. Now that we know how to brainstorm every possible cause with a fishbone diagram, what comes next? You need to figure out which of those causes actually matter most. That is where the Pareto chart comes in. A Pareto chart is built on the 80-20 rule, the idea that roughly 80% of problems usually come from about 20% of the causes. It takes your list of causes and ranks them in a bar chart from highest frequency to lowest, with a cumulative line running across the top. The toolbars on the left, those are your heavy hitters. Fix those first and you knock out the majority of defects. Now let's clear up the wrong answers. A scatter diagram shows whether two variables are related, like temperature and defect rate, but it does not rank causes. A flowchart maps out the steps of a process to find where problems might happen, but it does not prioritize which cause to fix first. A histogram shows how data is spread across ranges, but again, no ranking of causes. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says focus on the most impactful causes or prioritize corrective efforts, the answer is Pareto chart. Quick recall hook, Pareto equals priority. The big bars come first. 3. A bakery tracks the weight of its loaves each hour using a control chart. On Tuesday, 7 consecutive measurements all fall above the centre line, but still remain inside the upper and lower control limits. What should the quality manager conclude about this situation? A. The process is perfectly stable. B. No corrective action is ever needed. C. The measurement tool is broken. D. The process may be drifting out of control. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, D. The process may be drifting out of control. Explanation. Option D is correct, because 7 consecutive points on one side of the centre line signal a non-random pattern, suggesting the process mean may be drifting even though control limits have not yet been breached. Option A is incorrect because a truly stable process shows random variation around the centre line, and 7 consecutive points above it indicate a likely shift rather than normal stable operation within expected parameters. Option B is incorrect because recognizing a run of 7 points on one side of the centre line is a standard warning signal that investigation and possible corrective action should be taken by the quality team. Option C is incorrect because the pattern described is a well-known statistical signal of process drift on a control chart, not an indication of instrument malfunction, and blaming the tool ignores the real warning present. This question tests whether you understand control chart rules, specifically the run rule. A control chart has a center line showing the process average and upper and lower control limits. If the data points bounce randomly around that center line, the process is stable. But if 7 consecutive points all fall on one side of the center line, even if they are still inside the control limits, that is a warning signal. It means the process mean is probably shifting. Think of it like a coin flip. Getting 7 heads in a row is technically possible, but you would start to wonder if the coin is fair. Same idea here. The data is not random anymore. Something is pushing it in one direction. Now, saying the process is perfectly stable ignores that pattern entirely. Saying no corrective action is needed is wrong, because 7 in a row is a textbook signal to investigate. Saying the measurement tool is broken is just avoiding the real issue. The pattern is a known statistical signal, not an equipment glitch. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When a question mentions 7 consecutive points on one side of the center line, even within control limits, the answer is process drift. Quick recall hook. 7 in a row means something has to go. Investigate. 4. A hospital administrator wants to embed quality into every department, rather than relying on one inspection team reviewing outcomes at patient discharge. Which management philosophy best matches the goal of making quality improvement the responsibility of every single employee across the organization? A. Six Sigma. B. Total quality management. C. Statistical process control. D. Acceptance sampling. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, B. Total quality management. Explanation: option B is correct because total quality management is an organization-wide philosophy that involves every employee in continuous improvement, making quality a shared responsibility rather than the exclusive job of one inspection group. Option A is incorrect because Six Sigma is a data-driven methodology focused on reducing defects to near zero levels using statistical methods, but it operates through specially trained specialists rather than engaging every single employee. Option C is incorrect because statistical process control is a specific monitoring technique using control charts to track process output, not a broad management philosophy that assigns quality responsibility to every person in an organization. Option D is incorrect because acceptance sampling is an inspection method that evaluates a batch by testing a random sample from it, which represents end-stage inspection rather than embedding quality throughout all daily operations. Let's talk about a management philosophy that shows up frequently: total quality management, or TQM. The scenario here is a hospital that wants every single department involved in quality, not just one inspection team checking patients at discharge. That is the heart of TQM. Quality is everyone's job, from the janitor to the surgeon. It is an organization-wide mindset of continuous improvement. So why not Six Sigma? Six Sigma is powerful, but it works through specially trained experts. Green belts, black belts, running data-heavy projects to reduce defects. It is a methodology, not a philosophy that engages every single employee. Statistical process control, that is a specific technique, using control charts to monitor process output. It is a tool inside the quality toolbox, not a management philosophy. Acceptance sampling, that is literally end-stage inspection, testing a sample from a batch to decide whether to accept or reject it, the opposite of embedding quality throughout operations. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says every employee, organization-wide, or continuous improvement culture, that is TQM. Quick recall hook: TQM equals total, meaning totally everyone is responsible. 5. A furniture exporter learns that European buyers will only purchase from suppliers who hold a recognized international quality management system certification. The company needs certification proving its quality processes meet a globally accepted standard. Which certification should the company pursue? A. ISO 9001, B. Baldrige Award, C. Lean certification, D. DMEC Green Belt. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, A. ISO 9001. Explanation: option A is correct because ISO 9001 is the internationally recognized standard for quality management systems, and holding this certification demonstrates to global buyers that the company meets consistent, documented quality requirements. Option B is incorrect because the Baldrige Award is a United States National Quality Award recognizing organizational excellence, not an international quality management system certification that satisfies foreign buyer procurement requirements. Option C is incorrect because Lean certification relates to waste reduction methodologies within an organization and is not an internationally recognized quality management system standard that satisfies the requirements of global buyers. Option D is incorrect because DMEC Green Belt is a Six Sigma competency level earned by individuals who lead process improvement projects, not a company-wide quality management system certification recognized by international buyers. This one is about international credibility. A furniture exporter needs a certification that tells European buyers, we have a proven documented quality management system. That certification is ISO 9001. ISO 9001 is the globally recognized standard for quality management systems. It does not tell you how to build furniture. It tells buyers that your processes for designing, producing, and delivering products are consistent and documented. It is accepted worldwide. Now, the Baldrige Award is prestigious, but it is a United States national award for organizational excellence. A European buyer is not going to accept that as proof of a quality management system. Lean certification relates to waste reduction methods within operations. Useful internally, but not a quality management system certification that satisfies international procurement requirements. DMake Green Belt. That is a personal competency credential for someone trained in Six Sigma project management. It certifies an individual, not a company's quality system. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says internationally recognized, global certification, or quality management system standard, the answer is ISO 9001 every time. Quick recall hook. ISO equals international standards for organizations. 6. A growing logistics company is deciding whether to expand its current warehouse or lease a second facility across town. The operations team must evaluate how much output each option can sustain over the next 5 years under ideal conditions. Which concept best describes what the team is determining? A. Process layout. B. Demand forecasting. C. Bottleneck analysis. D. Design capacity. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, D. Design capacity. Explanation. Option D is correct because design capacity refers to the maximum output rate a facility can achieve under ideal conditions, which is exactly what the team needs to evaluate when comparing two expansion options. Option A is incorrect because process layout refers to the physical arrangement of equipment and workstations within a facility, not to the overall volume of output that a facility is capable of sustaining over time. Option B is incorrect because demand forecasting predicts future customer demand using historical data and market trends, but it does not measure or define how much output a given facility is actually capable of producing. Option C is incorrect because bottleneck analysis identifies the single constraint limiting throughput in a current process, whereas the team here is evaluating total capacity potential of two different facility options going forward. Here is a capacity concept you need to lock in: design capacity. A logistics company is weighing two options: expand the current warehouse or lease a second one. To decide, the operations team needs to figure out how much output each option can produce under ideal, perfect conditions over the next 5 years. That maximum theoretical output is called design capacity. It is the ceiling, the absolute best a facility can do if everything runs perfectly. No downtime, no interruptions. Now, process layout describes how equipment and workstations are physically arranged inside a facility. That has nothing to do with how much a facility can produce. Demand forecasting predicts how much customers will want in the future. It is about demand, not about what the facility can supply. Bottleneck analysis looks at the one specific step that is slowing down your current process. The team here is not troubleshooting a current constraint. They're evaluating total potential output for two different facility options. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says maximum output under ideal conditions, that is design capacity. Quick recall hook. Design capacity is the dream scenario, the theoretical max. 7. A retail chain is choosing between 3 cities for a new distribution centre. The decision depends on labour costs, highway proximity, local tax rates, and land prices. Which location analysis method lets the team assign weights to each factor and compare total scores across all candidate sites? A. center of gravity method, B, factor rating method, C, break-even analysis, D, transportation model. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, B, factor rating method. Explanation: option B is correct because the factor rating method assigns weights to relevant decision factors and scores each location on every factor, producing a weighted total score that makes structured site comparison straightforward. Option A is incorrect because the center of gravity method finds a location that minimizes transportation distance using geographic coordinates and shipping volumes, not by scoring and weighting qualitative factors like tax rates. Option C is incorrect because break-even analysis compares costs and revenues across different volume levels to find where each option becomes profitable, but it does not weigh multiple qualitative location factors against one another. Option D is incorrect because the transportation model is a quantitative method that minimizes total shipping costs between multiple supply and demand points, not a tool for scoring and weighting qualitative site selection factors. Picking a location for a new facility is a big decision, and the factor rating method is one of the most common ways to do it. Here is the setup. A retail chain is choosing between 3 cities. They care about labor costs, highway proximity, tax rates, and land prices. The factor rating method lets them assign a weight to each factor based on importance. Maybe highway proximity gets a weight of 30%. Labor costs get 25% and so on. Then each city gets scored on every factor. Multiply score times weight. Add them up, and the city with the highest total wins. Now the center of gravity method uses map coordinates and shipping volumes to find the location that minimizes total transportation distance. Good for distribution, but it does not score qualitative factors like tax rates. Break-even analysis compares fixed and variable costs across locations at different output levels to find where each becomes profitable. It is about cost and volume, not multi-factor scoring. The transportation model minimizes shipping costs between multiple sources and destinations. Pure logistics math, not a qualitative factor comparison. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question mentions weights, scoring, or multiple factors, that is the factor rating method. Quick recall hook. Factor rating equals weighted scorecard. 8. A semiconductor manufacturer decides to build a new fabrication plant that will be fully operational 2 years before projected demand reaches that level. The company accepts short-term idle capacity to avoid losing future market share to competitors. Which capacity strategy does this decision represent? A. Leading capacity strategy. B. Lagging capacity strategy. C. Tracking capacity strategy. D. Outsourcing capacity strategy. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, A. Leading capacity strategy. Explanation. Option A is correct because a leading capacity strategy adds capacity in advance of expected demand, accepting short-term underuse so the company is fully prepared when demand arrives, and competitors cannot capture its market. Option B is incorrect because a lagging capacity strategy waits until existing capacity is fully consumed before adding more, meaning the company would not invest in a plant 2 years ahead of actual projected demand. Option C is incorrect because a tracking capacity strategy adds small increments of capacity that closely match demand as it gradually grows, rather than making a large investment significantly before demand has materialized. Option D is incorrect because an outsourcing capacity strategy relies on external partners to handle additional demand, rather than investing in building a proprietary new facility ahead of projected future production needs. Capacity strategy is about timing. When do you add capacity relative to demand? This semiconductor company is building a fabrication plant 2 full years before demand is expected to reach that level. They're deliberately accepting idle capacity now to make sure they are ready when the market catches up. That is a leading capacity strategy. You build ahead of demand. The trade-off is short-term underuse, but the payoff is you do not lose customers to competitors when demand spikes. A lagging capacity strategy is the opposite. You wait until your current capacity is maxed out before you invest. That saves money up front, but you risk losing market share while you scramble to expand. A tracking capacity strategy adds small increments of capacity that closely match demand as it grows step by step. It is cautious and reactive, not a big, bold investment years ahead. An outsourcing capacity strategy hands off extra demand to an external partner instead of building your own facility. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says capacity is added before or in advance of demand, that is a leading strategy. Quick recall hook. Leading means leaping ahead of demand. 9. A frozen food company is selecting a site for a new processing plant and ranks proximity to dairy farms as the single most important consideration above all other factors. This tells us the company is prioritizing which type of location factor in its site selection decision. A. Market proximity factor. B. Labor availability factor. C. Supply proximity factor. D. Infrastructure access factor. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, C. Supply proximity factor. Explanation. Option C is correct because choosing a location close to dairy farms means the company prioritizes being near its raw material sources, which reduces transportation costs and spoilage risk for perishable inputs feeding production. Option A is incorrect because market proximity focuses on being close to end consumers or final distribution hubs, while this company specifically values nearness to its upstream raw material suppliers above all other considerations. Option B is incorrect because labor availability as a location factor focuses on accessing a sufficient and appropriately skilled workforce, not on geographic closeness to the sources of raw materials needed for production. Option D is incorrect because infrastructure access emphasizes the quality of roads, ports, utilities, and technology services at a site, whereas the frozen food company is specifically prioritizing closeness to its dairy farm suppliers. Location decisions depend on what matters most to the company. This frozen food company ranks proximity to dairy farms as the single most important factor. Dairy farms are where the raw materials come from: the milk, the cream, the butter. Being close to those suppliers cuts transportation costs and reduces spoilage risk for perishable inputs. That makes this a supply proximity factor. Market proximity would mean being close to the end customer or distribution hub. That is not what is happening here. The company cares about being near the upstream source, not the downstream buyer. Labor availability focuses on finding a location with enough skilled workers. Important, sure, but the question says the company ranks raw material access above everything else. Infrastructure access is about roads, ports, utilities, and tech services at a site. Again, not the driving factor for this decision. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says a company prioritizes being near raw materials or suppliers, the answer is supply proximity factor. Quick recall hook. Supply proximity equals source closeness. 10. A call center has the equipment and staffing to handle 800 calls per day under ideal conditions, but typically handles only 600 due to breaks, system updates, and shift transitions. A manager asks why actual output never matches the theoretical maximum. Which concept explains this gap? A. Demand variability. B. Process bottleneck. C. Design capacity. D. Effective capacity. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, D. Effective capacity. Explanation: option D is correct because effective capacity is the realistic output a facility can achieve after accounting for unavoidable factors like maintenance, breaks, and downtime, explaining why actual output consistently falls below design capacity. Option A is incorrect because demand variability refers to fluctuations in how many customers request service over time, not to the internal operational factors like breaks and system updates that reduce the actual output rate. Option B is incorrect because a process bottleneck is one specific step that limits throughput in a workflow, whereas the gap described comes from multiple routine operational reductions that collectively lower the achievable daily output. Option C is incorrect because design capacity is the theoretical maximum the call center could handle under perfect conditions, which is the 800 figure already stated, not the explanation for why actual output falls short. Here is a concept that trips people up: the difference between design capacity and effective capacity. The call center can handle 800 calls per day under perfect conditions. That is design capacity, the theoretical max. But in reality, workers take breaks, systems need updates, and shifts transition. After accounting for all that, the center actually handles 600 calls. That realistic output is effective capacity. It is the honest answer to how much can we actually produce, given normal operating conditions. Now, demand variability refers to fluctuations in customer demand. How many people call on different days? That does not explain why the facility cannot hit 800 even if 800 people called. Process bottleneck would mean one specific step is choking the flow. But here the gap comes from multiple routine factors: breaks, maintenance, shift changes, not one single constraint. Design capacity is the 800 figure itself, not the explanation for the gap. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question describes a gap between theoretical max and actual realistic output, with reasons like breaks, maintenance, or downtime, that is effective capacity. Quick recall hook. Effective capacity equals the everyday reality. 11. A custom furniture workshop produces unique pieces based on individual client specifications, with each order requiring different materials, dimensions, and finishing techniques. No two orders follow the exact same production sequence through the shop. Which process type best describes how this workshop operates? A. Job shop process. B. Batch process. C. Repetitive process. D. Continuous process. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer: A. Job shop process. Explanation. Option A is correct because a job shop process handles low volume, high variety work, where each order is unique and follows its own routing through the facility, exactly matching this custom furniture workshop scenario. Option B is incorrect because a batch process produces moderate volumes of similar items in groups before switching to the next product type, whereas this workshop creates entirely unique pieces, with no two following identical sequences. Option C is incorrect because a repetitive process produces standardized items in high volume along a fixed sequence, like an assembly line, which is the opposite of the custom, variable work described in this scenario. Option D is incorrect because a continuous process runs non-stop to produce highly standardized output, like chemicals or electricity, which has no resemblance to the low-volume, customized nature of this furniture workshop. Process types are matched to volume and variety. This custom furniture workshop makes unique pieces. Every order has different materials, dimensions, and finishing. No two jobs follow the same production path. That is the definition of a job shop process: low volume, high variety, and every order routed through the facility differently. A batch process handles moderate volumes of similar items in groups, then switches to the next product. That requires some standardization across orders within a batch, which does not exist here. A repetitive process produces the same standardized item in high volume along a fixed assembly line. Think car doors or cereal boxes. The opposite of custom one-off furniture. A continuous process runs non-stop, producing a single standardized output, like chemicals or electricity. No customization, no stopping, no variety. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question describes unique orders, custom specifications, and each job following its own route, that is a job shop. Quick recall hook. Job shop equals just one-of-a-kind orders. 12. An automobile manufacturer arranges its factory so that each car moves through a fixed sequence of stations where specific tasks are performed in the same order every time. Workstations are arranged along the path the product travels. Which layout type is this factory using for its production floor? A. Process layout. B. Fixed position layout. C. Cellular layout. D. Product layout. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, D. Product layout. Explanation: option D is correct because a product layout arranges workstations in a sequential line matching the order of production steps, so each unit moves along the same fixed path from start to finish. Option A is incorrect because a process layout groups similar machines or functions together in departments, and work moves between departments based on its unique routing rather than following one fixed sequential path. Option B is incorrect because a fixed position layout keeps the product stationary while workers and equipment come to it, which is used for very large items and is opposite to moving cars through stations. Option C is incorrect because a cellular layout groups dissimilar machines into small cells that produce families of similar parts, rather than arranging the entire factory floor as one continuous sequential production line. Layout types describe how you physically arrange a workspace. In this car factory, every vehicle moves through a fixed sequence of stations, same order, same path, every single time. Workstations are lined up along that path. That is a product layout, also called a production line or assembly line layout. It is designed for high volume, low variety production, where efficiency comes from repetition and flow. A process layout groups similar machines together in departments, all the welding in one area, all the painting in another. Work gets routed between departments based on what each particular job needs. That's flexible but slower than a dedicated line. A fixed position layout keeps the product stationary and brings everything to it: workers, tools, materials. Used for massive products like ships or buildings that cannot move. A cellular layout groups different machines into small self-contained cells that each handle a family of similar parts. It is a middle ground between process and product layouts, but it is not a single continuous production line. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says fixed sequence, same order every time, or workstations along a line, that is product layout, quick recall hook. Product layout equals production line. 13. A craft brewery produces 5 different seasonal beers throughout the year. Each season they produce a moderate quantity of one beer type, then clean the equipment and switch to the next variety. Production runs are grouped by product type before changeover. Which process type best fits this brewery? A. Job shop process. B. Batch process. C. Continuous process. D. Project process. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, B. Batch process. Explanation: option B is correct because a batch process produces moderate volumes of one product type in a group, then switches equipment over to produce the next product type, exactly matching how this seasonal brewery operates. Option A is incorrect because a job shop handles unique, one-of-a-kind orders where each job follows its own custom route, while this brewery repeats the same standardized recipe for each seasonal run of beer. Option C is incorrect because a continuous process runs non-stop to produce a single highly standardized output without interruption, whereas this brewery deliberately stops and switches between 5 different beer varieties each year. Option D is incorrect because a project process is used for one-time, unique, large-scale undertakings, like constructing a building, not for the repeated moderate volume production runs of seasonal products described here. Batch processing sits right in the middle of the volume variety spectrum. This craft brewery makes 5 different seasonal beers. Each season they produce a moderate quantity of one type, clean the equipment, and switch to the next variety. That pattern, produce a group, change over, produce the next group, is the hallmark of a batch process. A job shop handles unique, one-of-a-kind orders where each follows its own custom route. This brewery repeats the same recipe each season. It is not custom one-off work. A continuous process runs non-stop without ever shutting down for changeovers. This brewery deliberately stops and switches between products, which breaks continuity. A project process is for one-time, large-scale undertakings, like building a bridge. Brewing seasonal beer in repeated runs is nothing like that. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question describes moderate volume, grouped production runs, and changeovers between product types, that is a batch process. Quick recall hook. Batch equals bunches before switching. 14. A shipbuilding company constructs massive vessels that cannot be moved during production. Instead, all workers, materials, welding equipment, and cranes are brought directly to the vessel as it sits in the dry dock throughout the entire build. Which layout type does this represent? A. Product layout. B. Process layout. C. Fixed position layout. D. Cellular layout. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, C. Fixed position layout. Explanation. Option C is correct because a fixed position layout keeps the product stationary in one location, while all workers, materials, and equipment are brought to it, which is standard practice when the product is too large to move. Option A is incorrect because a product layout moves the item through a sequence of workstations arranged in a line, which is impossible when the product is a massive ship that cannot physically travel through the facility. Option B is incorrect because a process layout groups similar machines and functions into departments with work travelling between them, which does not apply when the product must remain stationary due to its size. Option D is incorrect because a cellular layout creates small self-contained workstations that handle families of similar parts, which is designed for smaller components and not for constructing a single enormous stationary vessel. When the product is too large or heavy to move, you bring everything to the product. That is a fixed position layout. This shipbuilding company constructs massive vessels in a dry dock. The ship does not travel through workstations. The welders, cranes, materials, and electricians all come to the ship. A product layout moves the item through sequential stations in a line. You cannot physically move a massive ship through a factory. A process layout groups similar machines into departments, with work travelling between them. Again, the ship is stationary. Nothing travels between departments. A cellular layout creates small, self-contained workstations for families of similar parts. That works for smaller components, not for constructing one enormous vessel. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says the product stays in one place and workers come to it, or describes something too large to move, ships, buildings, aircraft, that is a fixed position layout. Quick recall hook. Fixed position equals the product is fixed in place. 15. An oil refinery operates around the clock, every day of the year, transforming crude oil into gasoline and other petroleum products. The facility never shuts down for changeovers because it produces essentially the same standardized output at extremely high volumes without interruption. Which process type is this? A. Continuous process. B. Batch process. C. Job shop process. D. Repetitive process. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, A, continuous process. Explanation. Option A is correct because a continuous process runs non-stop to produce very high volumes of a standardized product without interruption, which exactly describes an oil refinery operating around the clock every single day. Option B is incorrect because a batch process produces moderate quantities of one product type, then stops to switch over to a different product, whereas this refinery runs without any changeovers or production stoppages at all. Option C is incorrect because a job shop produces unique custom orders in low volume with each job following its own routing, which is the complete opposite of a standardized, high-volume, non-stop oil refinery operation. Option D is incorrect because a repetitive process produces discrete standardized items along a fixed assembly line in high volume, but it still involves individual units, unlike the continuous flow of liquid petroleum output here. A continuous process is the extreme end of the volume variety spectrum. Maximum volume, minimum variety, zero stops. This oil refinery runs around the clock every day of the year. It transforms crude oil into gasoline and petroleum products without ever shutting down for changeovers. Same standardized output, non-stop. A batch process produces moderate quantities of one product, then stops to switch to a different one. The refinery never stops or switches. That rules out batch. A job shop produces unique custom orders in low volume, with each job following its own routing. An oil refinery is the complete opposite. Standardized, high-volume, uninterrupted flow. A repetitive process produces discrete standardized items along a fixed assembly line in high volume. Think individual car doors or bottles coming off a line one by one. The key difference is that a continuous process deals with flow. Liquids, gases, chemicals, not discrete individual units. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says runs non-stop, no changeovers, around the clock, and the product flows rather than comes in individual units, that is a continuous process. Quick recall hook. Continuous equals cannot stop, will not stop. 16. A warehouse supervisor notices that workers on the packing line report extreme boredom from performing the same narrow task all day. The supervisor decides to give each worker 3 additional tasks at the same skill level to add variety to their daily routine. Which job design strategy is being applied here? A. Job rotation. B. Job enrichment. C. Worker empowerment. D. Job enlargement. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, D. Job enlargement. Explanation. Option D is correct because job enlargement adds more tasks at the same skill and responsibility level to a worker's role, increasing variety and reducing monotony without changing the degree of authority or decision-making involved. Option A is incorrect because job rotation periodically moves workers between entirely different positions or departments, whereas here the workers stay at the packing line and simply receive additional tasks added to their existing role. Option B is incorrect because job enrichment increases the depth of a job by adding higher level responsibilities like planning or decision-making authority, not simply adding more tasks at the same existing skill level as described. Option C is incorrect because worker empowerment gives employees authority to make decisions about how their work is performed and to solve problems independently, which goes beyond merely adding more same-level tasks to a role. Job design questions test whether you know the difference between adding more tasks and adding more responsibility. Here, the warehouse supervisor gives packing line workers 3 additional tasks at the same skill level. No new authority, no decision-making power, just more variety in what they do each day. That is job enlargement. It widens the job horizontally. Job rotation would mean moving workers between entirely different positions or departments on a schedule. These workers stay at the packing line. They just get extra tasks added to what they already do. Job enrichment adds depth, not width. It means giving workers higher level responsibilities like planning, decision-making, or self-management. Adding 3 more same-level tasks does not make the job deeper. Worker empowerment goes further still. It gives employees actual authority to make decisions and solve problems on their own. That is a different level from simply adding variety at the same skill tier. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says more tasks at the same skill level, or added variety without added authority, that is job enlargement. Quick recall hook. Enlargement equals expanding sideways, same level. 17. A project manager needs a visual tool that displays each task along a horizontal timeline, showing when each activity starts, how long it lasts, and which tasks overlap in the schedule. The manager wants a quick snapshot of the overall project timeline at a glance. Which tool fits this need? A. Cause and effect diagram. B. Network diagram. C. Gantt chart. D. Check sheet. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, C. Gantt chart. Explanation. Option C is correct because a Gantt chart uses horizontal bars along a timeline to show each task's start date, duration, and overlap with other tasks, giving managers a clear visual snapshot of the project schedule. Option A is incorrect because a cause and effect diagram is a quality tool used to identify and organise potential causes of a problem, and it has nothing to do with displaying project tasks along a timeline. Option B is incorrect because a network diagram shows task dependencies and sequences to identify the critical path, but it does not display tasks as horizontal bars along a calendar timeline for quick schedule visualization. Option D is incorrect because a check sheet is a simple data collection form used to tally the frequency of events or defects, and it serves no function in scheduling or displaying project task timelines. Project scheduling comes up a lot, and the Gantt chart is the go-to visual tool. The project manager wants to see every task on a horizontal timeline, when it starts, how long it lasts, and which tasks overlap. A Gantt chart does exactly that. Each task gets a horizontal bar, and the length of the bar shows the duration. You can see at a glance what is happening at any point in the project. A cause and effect diagram is a quality tool for brainstorming causes of a problem. It has zero connection to scheduling or timelines. A network diagram shows task dependencies, which tasks must finish before others can start. And it is used to find the critical path, but it does not lay tasks out on a calendar timeline for a quick visual snapshot. A check sheet is a data collection tally form for counting defects or events, nothing to do with scheduling. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says horizontal timeline, visual snapshot, start and duration of tasks, that is a Gantt chart. Quick recall hook. Gantt equals the timeline at a glance. 18. A factory redesigns its assembly stations after workers report chronic back pain from bending over low work tables for 8-hour shifts. The company raises table heights, adds adjustable chairs, and improves lighting based on worker physical needs. Which discipline guides these workplace modifications? A. Ergonomics. B. Time study. C. Methods analysis. D. Work sampling. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, A. Ergonomics. Explanation. Option A is correct because ergonomics is the discipline of designing workplaces, tools and tasks to fit the physical capabilities and limitations of workers, aiming to reduce strain, injury, and fatigue during work. Option B is incorrect because a time study measures how long it takes a qualified worker to complete a specific task at a normal pace, and it does not address the physical design of workstations to reduce bodily strain. Option C is incorrect because methods analysis examines the steps in a work process to find more efficient ways of performing tasks, but it does not specifically focus on fitting the workplace to human physical needs and limitations. Option D is incorrect because work sampling uses random observations to estimate the proportion of time workers spend on various activities, and it has no role in redesigning physical workstation dimensions to prevent worker injuries. When a factory redesigns workstations because workers are getting hurt, the discipline driving those changes is ergonomics. Ergonomics is about fitting the workplace to the worker, not the other way around. This factory raised table heights, added adjustable chairs, and improved lighting because workers had chronic back pain from bending over low tables. That is textbook ergonomics. Redesigning the physical environment to reduce strain, injury, and fatigue. A time study measures how long it takes a worker to complete a specific task at a normal pace. Useful for setting labour standards, but it does not deal with workstation design or worker physical comfort. Methods analysis examines the steps in a work process to find more efficient ways to do things. It might lead to fewer steps or faster workflows, but the focus is efficiency, not fitting the workspace to human body mechanics. Work sampling uses random observations to estimate what percentage of time workers spend on different activities. It is a measurement technique, not a design discipline for preventing injuries. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question mentions redesigning the workspace to fit workers' physical needs, adjusting heights, seating, lighting, or reducing strain. That is ergonomics. Quick recall hook. Ergonomics equals ergo, fit the workspace to the human. 19. A print shop has 5 customer orders waiting to be processed on a single press. The manager wants to select the order in which jobs are completed so that the average time each customer waits for their order is minimized across all 5 jobs. Which scheduling approach specifically targets reducing average customer wait time? A. First come, first served rule. B. Shortest processing time rule. C. Earliest due date rule. D. Critical ratio rule. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, B. Shortest processing time rule. Explanation. Option B is correct because the shortest processing time rule sequences jobs from quickest to longest, which mathematically minimizes the average flow time and therefore reduces the average waiting time experienced across all customers. Option A is incorrect because first come, first served processes jobs in the order they arrived, regardless of duration, which may result in shorter jobs waiting behind longer ones and raising the average overall wait time. Option C is incorrect because the earliest due date rule prioritizes jobs based on which deadline comes soonest, aiming to reduce lateness rather than specifically minimizing the average time each customer spends waiting for completion. Option D is incorrect because the critical ratio rule divides time remaining until the due date by work time remaining to determine urgency, which focuses on meeting deadlines rather than on minimizing the average customer wait time. Scheduling rules are about deciding the order in which jobs get processed. The print shop has 5 orders, 1 press, and the manager wants to minimize the average time customers wait. The answer is the shortest processing time rule, or SPT. SPT sequences jobs from quickest to longest. By knocking out short jobs first, you reduce the number of customers stuck waiting while a long job blocks the machine. Mathematically, this approach produces the lowest average flow time. And that means the lowest average wait across all customers. First come, first served processes jobs in arrival order, regardless of how long they take. If a massive job arrives first, every short job behind it waits forever. That drives up average wait time. Earliest due date prioritizes whichever deadline is soonest. The goal there is reducing lateness, not minimizing average wait. Critical ratio divides time remaining until the due date by processing time remaining. That measures urgency relative to deadlines, which is a different objective from minimizing average customer wait. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says minimize average wait time or minimize average flow time, the answer is shortest processing time. Quick recall hook. SPT equals short jobs go first. Everyone waits less. 20. A software company decides to give its customer support agents the authority to approve refunds up to a certain amount without asking a manager, plus the responsibility to track and report their own performance metrics weekly. Which job design strategy does this change represent? A. Job rotation. B. Job enlargement. C. Methods analysis. D. Job enrichment. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, D. Job enrichment. Explanation: option D is correct because job enrichment adds higher level responsibilities such as decision-making authority and self-management to a role, increasing the depth and meaningfulness of the work beyond simple task execution. Option A is incorrect because job rotation moves workers between different positions periodically to broaden their skills and reduce boredom, but it does not add decision-making authority or self-management responsibilities to one role. Option B is incorrect because job enlargement adds more tasks at the same skill and responsibility level to increase variety, whereas this scenario adds authority to approve refunds and responsibility for self-reporting, which deepen the role. Option C is incorrect because methods analysis is a systematic study of how work is performed to identify improvements in efficiency, not a job design strategy that changes the level of authority or responsibility given to employees. Here is where job enrichment gets tested directly. This software company gives customer support agents the authority to approve refunds on their own, plus the responsibility to track and report their own performance metrics. That is not just more tasks, it is deeper responsibility. Decision-making authority and self-management are being added to the role. That is job enrichment. It makes the work more meaningful by giving the employee ownership over outcomes. Job rotation would mean periodically moving agents to different roles, maybe shifting someone from support to billing to onboarding. That broadens skills but does not deepen any single role with authority. Job enlargement adds more tasks at the same skill level to reduce boredom. Approving refunds and self-reporting performance metrics are higher level activities, not same level variety. Methods analysis is a systematic study of how work gets done to find efficiency improvements. It is an analytical technique, not a strategy for changing the level of authority or responsibility in a role. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question mentions adding decision-making authority, self-management, or higher level responsibilities to a role, that is job enrichment. Quick recall hook. Enrichment equals elevated responsibility. 21. A furniture manufacturer discovers that workers spend significant time walking between distant storage areas and their workstations to retrieve parts throughout each shift. A consultant recommends eliminating this wasted movement entirely. Which operations philosophy specifically aims to identify and remove all forms of waste from a production process? A. Lean operations. B. Six Sigma. C. Theory of constraints. D. Total productive maintenance. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, A. Lean operations. Explanation. Option A is correct because lean operations is a philosophy focused specifically on identifying and eliminating all forms of waste, including unnecessary movement, waiting, overproduction, and excess inventory from production processes. Option B is incorrect because Six Sigma is a methodology focused on reducing process variation and defects using statistical analysis, not specifically on identifying and eliminating all categories of waste from production operations as its primary goal. Option C is incorrect because the theory of constraints focuses on identifying and managing the single bottleneck that limits system throughput, rather than systematically targeting every form of waste across the entire production process. Option D is incorrect because total productive maintenance focuses specifically on maximizing equipment effectiveness and preventing machine breakdowns through proactive maintenance programs, not on eliminating all forms of operational waste company-wide. Let's dig into one of the most tested philosophies in operations management: lean operations. A furniture manufacturer discovers workers are spending a big chunk of their shift just walking back and forth between distant storage areas and their workstations. That walking is not adding value to the product. It is pure waste. A consultant says eliminate it. That thinking is lean in a nutshell. Lean operations is a philosophy built around one idea: identify and remove every form of waste from the production process. The original Toyota production system identified 7 types of waste: transportation, inventory, motion, waiting, overproduction, overprocessing, and defects. Unnecessary movement, like workers walking across the factory, falls squarely under motion waste. Now, Six Sigma is focused on reducing variation and defects using statistical tools. It is about precision, not waste elimination broadly. Theory of constraints zeroes in on one thing: the single bottleneck limiting your system's throughput. It does not try to eliminate all forms of waste everywhere. Total productive maintenance is about keeping machines running through proactive maintenance programs. Important, but it is equipment-focused, not a whole system waste elimination philosophy. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says eliminate waste, remove non-value activities, or mentions unnecessary motion, waiting, or overproduction, the answer is lean operations. Quick recall hook. Lean means less waste, every activity needed. 22. A printing company schedules regular equipment inspections and parts replacement every 3 months, even when machines appear to be running fine, to avoid unexpected breakdowns during critical production runs. Which maintenance strategy does this scheduled approach to equipment care represent? A. Reactive maintenance. B. Breakdown maintenance. C. Preventive maintenance. D. Corrective maintenance. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer: C. Preventive maintenance. Explanation: option C is correct because preventive maintenance involves performing scheduled inspections, servicing, and parts replacement at regular intervals before equipment fails, specifically aiming to avoid unexpected breakdowns during critical operations. Option A is incorrect because reactive maintenance means waiting until equipment actually fails before taking action to repair it, which is the exact opposite of this company's approach of scheduling maintenance before any problems appear. Option B is incorrect because breakdown maintenance is another term for fixing equipment only after it has already stopped working, while this printing company specifically acts before any failure occurs on a regular 3-month schedule. Option D is incorrect because corrective maintenance is performed after a fault or deficiency has been detected or reported, whereas this company performs its scheduled maintenance proactively before any issues are identified or reported. Maintenance strategy is a straightforward concept, but the exam likes to test whether you can tell the difference between fixing things before they break and fixing them after. This printing company schedules equipment inspections and parts replacement every 3 months, even when machines seem fine. They are not waiting for something to go wrong. They are acting ahead of any failure. That is preventive maintenance. The whole point is to avoid unexpected breakdowns during critical production run by servicing equipment on a regular schedule. Reactive maintenance is the opposite. You wait until the machine actually breaks, then you scramble to fix it. That is expensive and disruptive. Breakdown maintenance is just another name for the same thing. You only act after a failure. Corrective maintenance is performed after a fault has been found or reported. The key distinction is that the printing company acts before any fault appears. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says scheduled inspections, regular intervals, or before failure occurs, that is preventive maintenance. Quick recall hook. Preventive equals preventing problems before they start. 23. A bicycle factory has 5 workstations in sequence. The painting station can only process 30 frames per hour, while every other station handles 50 or more. The entire factory output is limited to 30 per hour, regardless of how fast the other stations work. Which concept best explains this situation? A. Effective capacity shortfall. B. Lean waste identification. C. Design capacity limitation. D. Theory of constraints bottleneck. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, D. Theory of constraints bottleneck. Explanation. Option D is correct because the theory of constraints identifies the bottleneck, the single slowest resource that limits the entire system's throughput, which in this case is the painting station restricting total factory output. Option A is incorrect because effective capacity refers to realistic output after accounting for downtime and breaks across the entire system, not to one specific workstation that is physically slower than all others in the sequence. Option B is incorrect because lean waste identification targets unnecessary activities like excess motion or waiting. But the painting station is performing necessary work, and the issue is its limited speed relative to other stations. Option C is incorrect because design capacity describes the maximum theoretical output of the entire facility under ideal conditions, whereas this problem is specifically about one station constraining the whole system's actual throughput rate. The theory of constraints is all about finding the weakest link. A bicycle factory has 5 workstations in sequence. 4 of them can handle 50 or more frames per hour, but the painting station maxes out at 30. That means the entire factory can only produce 30 frames per hour. The slowest station sets the pace for everything. That is the bottleneck. The theory of constraints says your system can only move as fast as its slowest resource, and improving anything other than the bottleneck will not increase total output. Effective capacity refers to realistic output after accounting for downtime and breaks across the whole system. It does not pinpoint one specific station as the limiter. Lean waste identification looks for unnecessary activities everywhere. But the painting station is doing necessary work. It is just slower. Design capacity is the maximum theoretical output of the entire facility, not a concept that explains why one station drags down the whole line. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says one station limits the entire system's output, or describes a single slowest step constraining everything else, that is the theory of constraints bottleneck. Quick recall hook. TOC equals the slowest station sets the pace for the total output chain. 24. A warehouse manager implements a system where every tool has a designated labelled location, all unnecessary items are removed from the workspace, and employees follow daily cleaning routines. The goal is to create a visually organised and efficient work environment. Which lean methodology is being applied here? A. Kaizen. B. 5S. C. Kanban. D. Value stream mapping. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, B. 5S. Explanation. Option B is correct because 5S is a lean workplace organisation method with 5 steps: sort, set in order, shine, standardise and sustain, that creates clean, labelled, visually organised and efficient work environments. Option A is incorrect because Kaizen is a philosophy of continuous incremental improvement involving all employees, which is broader than the specific workplace organisation and cleaning system described in this particular warehouse scenario. Option C is incorrect because Kanban is a visual signalling system used to control inventory and production flow by triggering replenishment only when items are consumed, not a method for organising and labelling physical workspaces. Option D is incorrect because value stream mapping is an analytical tool that documents every step in a process from raw material to customer delivery to identify waste, not a hands-on method for organizing physical tool storage. 5S is the lean method for workplace organization, and once you know the 5 steps, this question is easy to spot. The warehouse manager gives every tool a designated labeled location, removes unnecessary items, and sets up daily cleaning routines. That matches 5S perfectly. The 5 steps are sort. Remove what is not needed. Set in order. A place for everything. Shine. Clean the workspace regularly. Standardize. Make it consistent. Sustain. Maintain the discipline over time. Kaizen is a broader philosophy of continuous incremental improvement involving all employees. It is the big picture mindset, while 5S is a specific hands-on method for organizing the physical space. Kanban is a visual signaling system that controls inventory flow. Cards or signals trigger replenishment when items are consumed. It has nothing to do with labeling tool locations or cleaning routines. Value stream mapping documents every step in a process from raw material to customer delivery to identify waste. It is an analytical tool, not a hands-on workspace organization method. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question describes labeled locations, removing clutter, cleaning routines, or visual organization of a workspace, that is 5S. Quick recall hook: 5S equals sort, set, shine, standardize, sustain. 25. A food processing plant encourages every employee, from line workers to supervisors, to submit small daily improvement suggestions that reduce waste or save time. The company believes that many small changes over time lead to significant gains. Which improvement philosophy does this practice follow? A. Six Sigma. B. Business process re-engineering. C. Kaizen. D. Total productive maintenance. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, C. Kaizen. Explanation: option C is correct because Kaizen is a philosophy of continuous, incremental improvement where every employee contributes small daily suggestions that accumulate over time into significant operational gains in quality, efficiency, and waste reduction. Option A is incorrect because Six Sigma relies on trained specialists using statistical tools to achieve dramatic defect reduction in targeted projects, rather than depending on all employees submitting small, daily improvement ideas across the organization. Option B is incorrect because business process re-engineering involves radical, large-scale redesign of entire business processes from scratch to achieve dramatic improvements, which is the opposite of the small, gradual, daily changes described here. Option D is incorrect because total productive maintenance focuses specifically on maximizing equipment, reliability and effectiveness through proactive maintenance programs, not on gathering small daily improvement ideas from every employee across all areas. Kaizen is the philosophy of continuous incremental improvement, and this question nails the concept perfectly. A food processing plant asks every single employee, line workers, supervisors, everyone, to submit small daily improvement suggestions. The belief is that many small changes over time add up to massive gains. That is Kaizen. It is not about one big dramatic overhaul. It is about a culture where everyone contributes small ideas every single day. Six Sigma works through trained specialists, green belts and black belts, running data-heavy projects to achieve dramatic defect reductions. That is expert-driven. Not everyone contributes daily. Business process re-engineering is the radical approach. You tear down existing processes and rebuild them from scratch for dramatic improvements. The exact opposite of small, gradual, daily changes. Total productive maintenance focuses specifically on equipment reliability through proactive maintenance programs. It is machine-focused, not a philosophy about gathering daily improvement ideas from every employee. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says every employee, small daily improvements, or continuous incremental change, That is Kaizen. Quick recall hook. Kaizen equals constant and incremental. Zero excuses needed. 26. A toy retailer notices that small fluctuations in customer demand at the store level cause increasingly larger swings in orders placed by distributors and then by the factory. Each stage in the supply chain overreacts to the previous stage's order changes. Which supply chain concept describes this pattern of amplified demand distortion? A. Vendor-managed inventory. B. Vertical integration. C. Logistics optimization. D. Bullwhip effect. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, D. Bullwhip effect. Explanation: option D is correct because the bullwhip effect describes how small changes in end consumer demand become progressively amplified as orders move upstream through each stage of the supply chain, causing increasing distortion. Option A is incorrect because vendor-managed inventory is an arrangement where the supplier monitors and replenishes stock for the buyer, which is a strategy to reduce demand distortion rather than a name for the distortion itself. Option B is incorrect because vertical integration means a company owns multiple stages of its supply chain, such as manufacturing and distribution, which is a structural decision and not a term for demand signal amplification. Option C is incorrect because logistics optimization refers to improving the efficiency of transportation, warehousing, and distribution operations, and it does not describe the phenomenon of demand fluctuations growing larger at each upstream stage. The bullwhip effect is one of the most important supply chain concepts you will see on this exam. Here's what happens. A toy retailer sees a small bump in customer demand. The store overreacts and places a bigger order with its distributor. The distributor sees that larger order and overreacts even more, placing an even bigger order with the factory. By the time the signal reaches the manufacturer, a small ripple in customer demand has turned into a tidal wave of orders. Each stage amplifies the distortion. That is the bullwhip effect. Small fluctuations at the consumer end get progressively larger as they move upstream. Vendor-managed inventory is a strategy to fix this problem. The supplier monitors stock and replenishes it, which reduces overreaction. It is a solution, not the name of the problem. Vertical integration means owning multiple stages of your supply chain. That is a structural decision, not a demand distortion phenomenon. Logistics optimization improves transportation and warehousing efficiency. It has nothing to do with demand signals getting amplified between supply chain partners. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question describes demand fluctuations getting larger at each upstream stage, or overreaction cascading through the supply chain, that is the bullwhip effect. Quick recall hook. Bullwhip equals the big whip, cracks louder upstream. 27. A clothing brand decides to share its real-time point-of-sale data directly with its fabric suppliers so they can see exactly what is selling and adjust their production accordingly without waiting for formal purchase orders. Which supply chain strategy does this data-sharing arrangement best represent? A. Supply chain partnering. B. Bullwhip effect. C. Economic order quantity. D. Backward integration. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, A. Supply chain partnering. Explanation: option A is correct because supply chain partnering involves close collaboration and real-time information sharing between buyers and suppliers, allowing both parties to respond faster and more accurately to actual market demand. Option B is incorrect because the bullwhip effect is a problem of demand distortion across supply chain stages, not a strategy where companies deliberately share sales data to improve coordination with their suppliers. Option C is incorrect because economic order quantity is a formula for calculating the optimal order size that minimizes total ordering and holding costs, and it has nothing to do with sharing point-of-sale data between partners. Option D is incorrect because backward integration means a company acquires or takes ownership of its upstream suppliers, whereas this scenario describes two independent companies choosing to share data voluntarily without any ownership change. Supply chain partnering is about collaboration and transparency between companies. This clothing brand shares real-time point-of-sale data directly with its fabric suppliers. No waiting for formal purchase orders. The supplier can see what is actually selling and adjust production accordingly. That is supply chain partnering. Two separate companies choosing to share information so both can respond faster to actual market conditions. The bullwhip effect is the problem of demand distortion cascading through the supply chain. Sharing data is actually a way to reduce the bullwhip effect, but the strategy itself is called partnering. Economic order quantity is a formula for calculating optimal order sizes. It is a math tool for inventory management, not a collaborative data sharing arrangement between companies. Backward integration means a company acquires its upstream suppliers, actually buying them. This scenario involves two independent companies voluntarily sharing data, with no ownership change at all. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question describes companies sharing data, collaborating on forecasts, or providing real-time visibility across the supply chain, that is supply chain partnering. Quick recall hook. Partnering equals sharing data, staying separate. 28. A coffee company that previously purchased beans from independent farmers decides to buy its own plantations in Colombia so it can control the growing, harvesting, and initial processing stages of its supply chain. Which supply chain structural strategy does this acquisition decision best represent? A. Forward integration. B. Outsourcing. C. Vertical integration. D. Supply chain partnering. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, C. Vertical integration. Explanation. Option C is correct because vertical integration occurs when a company takes ownership of upstream or downstream stages in its supply chain. And buying plantations means the coffee company now owns its raw material supply stage directly. Option A is incorrect because forward integration specifically means expanding ownership toward the customer end of the supply chain, such as opening retail stores, whereas buying plantations moves the company upstream toward raw material sourcing. Option B is incorrect because outsourcing means contracting external companies to perform activities the business previously handled internally, which is the opposite of this company acquiring its own plantations to bring production in-house. Option D is incorrect because supply chain partnering involves collaboration and information sharing between separate independent organizations, whereas this company is purchasing outright ownership of its supplier operations rather than simply collaborating. Vertical integration means owning more of your supply chain. This coffee company was buying beans from independent farmers, but now it is purchasing its own plantations in Colombia. It now controls the growing, harvesting, and initial processing stages directly. That is vertical integration, taking ownership of upstream or downstream stages in the supply chain. Since the company moved toward the raw material source, this is specifically backward vertical integration. Forward integration moves the other direction, toward the customer. If the coffee company opened its own retail cafes, that would be forward integration. Outsourcing is the opposite of bringing things in-house. It means handing operations off to an external company. Buying plantations is the exact reverse. You are taking control, not giving it up. Supply chain partnering involves collaborating with independent companies through data sharing and coordination without any ownership change. Buying plantations is an ownership move, not a partnership. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says a company buys or acquires a supplier or a distribution channel, that is vertical integration. Toward the source is backward, toward the customer is forward. Quick recall hook. vertical integration equals owning more of the value chain. 29. An electronics assembler receives components from its supplier in small, frequent shipments, timed to arrive exactly when they are needed on the production line, carrying almost zero inventory in its own warehouse at any given time. Which supply chain delivery philosophy does this arrangement follow? A. Economic order quantity model. B. Just-in-time delivery. C. Safety stock strategy. D. Forward buying strategy. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, B. Just-in-time delivery. Explanation. Option B is correct because just-in-time delivery coordinates supplier shipments to arrive precisely when materials are needed in production, eliminating the need for large inventory buffers and reducing warehouse holding costs significantly. Option A is incorrect because the economic order quantity model calculates an optimal fixed order size that balances ordering costs against holding costs, and it typically results in larger, less frequent deliveries rather than small continuous ones. Option C is incorrect because a safety stock strategy maintains extra inventory as a buffer against demand uncertainty or supply disruptions, which is the opposite of operating with almost zero warehouse inventory, as described in this scenario. Option D is incorrect because forward buying means purchasing large quantities in advance to take advantage of discounts or anticipated price increases, which builds up inventory, rather than minimizing it through precisely timed deliveries. Just-in-time delivery is one of the cornerstones of lean operations. This electronics assembler receives components in small, frequent shipments, timed to arrive exactly when they are needed on the production line, almost zero inventory sitting in the warehouse at any given time. That is JIT. The idea is simple. Why pay to store things you do not need yet? Coordinate with your supplier so materials show up right when you need them. Not a day before, not a week before. Economic order quantity calculates an optimal fixed order size that balances ordering costs against holding costs. It typically results in larger, less frequent deliveries. The opposite of small, frequent, precisely timed shipments. Safety stock is extra inventory held as a buffer against unexpected demand or supply problems. Carrying almost zero warehouse inventory is the opposite of maintaining a safety stock cushion. Forward buying means purchasing large quantities in advance to lock in a lower price or beat anticipated price increases. That builds up inventory, which is exactly what JIT tries to avoid. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says small frequent shipments arrive exactly when needed, or near zero inventory, that is just in time, quick recall hook. JIT equals just when I need it, not a moment before. 30. A mid-sized appliance manufacturer currently assembles all products in its own factory, but is considering hiring an external company to handle all packaging and shipping operations to reduce overhead costs and focus internal resources on production. Which supply chain decision is this manufacturer evaluating? A. Outsourcing. B. Vertical integration. C. Bullwhip mitigation. D. Demand forecasting. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, A. Outsourcing. Explanation. Option A is correct because outsourcing involves contracting an external company to perform business functions that were previously handled internally, allowing the manufacturer to reduce overhead and concentrate on its core production competencies. Option B is incorrect because vertical integration means bringing more supply chain stages under the company's direct ownership and control, which is the opposite of handing off packaging and shipping operations to an outside firm. Option C is incorrect because bullwhip mitigation refers to strategies for reducing demand distortion across supply chain stages, and it has nothing to do with the decision of whether to keep or transfer packaging operations externally. Option D is incorrect because demand forecasting is the process of predicting future customer demand using historical data and market analysis not a decision about whether internal operations should be transferred to an external service provider. Outsourcing is the decision to hand off an internal function to an external company. This appliance manufacturer currently handles everything in-house, but is thinking about hiring an outside firm to take over packaging and shipping. The goal is to reduce overhead and refocus internal resources on production, their core competency. That is outsourcing. Vertical integration is the opposite direction. It means bringing more stages under your direct ownership. If this company bought its own trucking fleet, that would be integration. Hiring an outside firm to do the work is the reverse move. Bullwhip mitigation refers to strategies for reducing demand distortion in the supply chain. It is a specific supply chain problem and solution set, not a make or buy decision about internal operations. Demand forecasting predicts future customer demand. It is an analytical activity, not a decision about whether to keep functions internal or transfer them to an external provider. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says hiring an external company to handle an internal function, or contracting outside for operations previously done in-house, that is outsourcing. Quick recall hook. Outsourcing equals out of house, someone else does it. 31. A hardware store wants to find the ideal number of units to order each time it restocks a popular drill bit, so that the combined cost of placing orders and storing inventory is as low as possible over the entire year. Which inventory model is specifically designed to solve this type of order sizing problem? A. Reorder point model. B. ABC classification. C. Economic order quantity model. D. Material requirements planning. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, C. Economic order quantity model. Explanation. Option C is correct because the economic order quantity model calculates the optimal order size that minimizes the total of annual ordering costs and annual holding costs, which is exactly the balance this hardware store seeks. Option A is incorrect because the reorder point model determines when to place a new order based on remaining inventory level and lead time, but it does not calculate how many units should be included in each order. Option B is incorrect because ABC classification categorizes inventory items by their annual dollar value into priority groups for management attention, and it does not calculate the optimal number of units to order at one time. Option D is incorrect because material requirements planning determines what components are needed, how many, and when based on a production schedule for finished goods, not the cost-minimizing order size for independent retail demand. Economic order quantity, or EOQ, is an inventory model you need to know cold. A hardware store wants to figure out the ideal number of drill bits to order each time it restocks. The goal is to minimize the total combined cost of placing orders and storing inventory over the whole year. That is exactly what EOQ calculates. It finds the sweet spot where ordering costs and holding costs are balanced. Order too frequently, and ordering costs pile up. Order too much at once, and holding costs pile up. EOQ finds the point where the sum is lowest. The reorder point model tells you when to place an order based on your current stock level and lead time. It answers when, not how many. ABC classification ranks inventory items by their annual dollar value to decide which deserve the most management attention. It is a prioritization tool, not an order sizing formula. Material requirements. Planning determines what components are needed, how many and when based on a production schedule for finished goods. It handles dependent demand in manufacturing, not independent retail demand order sizing. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says optimal order size, minimize ordering plus holding costs, or how many to order, that is EOQ. Quick recall hook. EOQ equals exactly the optimal quantity. 32. A pharmacy must decide when to submit a new order for a prescription medication so that fresh stock arrives before the current supply runs out completely. The pharmacist needs to account for average daily usage and the number of days the supplier takes to deliver. Which inventory concept addresses this timing decision? A. Economic order quantity. B. Safety stock level. C. ABC classification. D. Reorder point. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, D. Reorder point. Explanation: option D is correct because the reorder point is the inventory level at which a new order should be placed, calculated using average daily demand and supplier lead time, so stock arrives before the current supply is depleted. Option A is incorrect because economic order quantity determines how many units to order each time to minimize total costs, but it does not tell the pharmacist at which inventory level to trigger the next order for timely replenishment. Option B is incorrect because safety stock is extra inventory, held as a buffer against unexpected demand spikes or delivery delays, not the specific trigger point at which a routine replenishment order should be placed. Option C is incorrect because ABC classification ranks inventory items by their annual dollar value to determine management priority, and it does not calculate when a specific item needs to be reordered based on usage and lead time. The reorder point answers one specific question. When do I need to place my next order so I do not run out? This pharmacy tracks daily usage of a prescription medication and knows how many days the supplier takes to deliver. The reorder point is the inventory level that triggers a new order, calculated by multiplying average daily demand by lead time in days. Place the order at that level, and fresh stock arrives right before the current supply hits zero. Economic order quantity tells you how many units to order each time, but it does not tell you at what inventory level to pull the trigger. Safety stock is the extra cushion you hold in case demand spikes or the supplier is late. It may factor into the reorder point calculation, but it is the buffer itself, not the trigger point. ABC classification ranks inventory items by dollar value for management attention. It has nothing to do with when to reorder a specific item based on usage and lead time. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question asks when to order or says inventory level that triggers a new order, that is the reorder point. Quick recall hook: reorder point equals the reorder alarm that rings at the right level. 33. A warehouse manager discovers that out of 3,000 different parts in stock, roughly 60 items account for about 80% of total annual inventory spending. The manager wants to focus the most attention and tightest controls on those high-value items. Which inventory classification method supports this prioritization approach? A. ABC analysis. B. Reorder point system. C. Just-in-time method. D. Economic order quantity. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, A. ABC analysis. Explanation: option A is correct because ABC analysis classifies inventory items into three groups based on annual dollar value, with the items representing the small percentage of parts that account for the largest share of total spending. Option B is incorrect because the reorder point system calculates when to place a new order based on usage rate and lead time for individual items, not how to classify and prioritize thousands of items by their relative spending value. Option C is incorrect because just-in-time is a delivery philosophy focused on receiving materials exactly when needed to minimize inventory, not a classification tool for ranking items by their annual dollar value and management priority. Option D is incorrect because economic order quantity calculates the optimal number of units per order to minimize costs for a single item, and it does not classify or rank items across the entire inventory by total annual spending. ABC analysis is an inventory classification method based on the Pareto principle, the same 80-20 idea you saw with the Pareto chart, but applied to inventory management. This warehouse has 3,000 different parts. 60 of those items account for about 80% of total annual spending. The manager wants the tightest controls on those high-value items. ABC analysis sorts inventory into three groups. Our items are the small percentage of parts that eat up the largest share of spending. Tight controls, frequent reviews, accurate records. B items are moderate in value and get moderate attention. C items are the bulk of inventory by count, but represent a small fraction of total spending. Loose controls are fine. The reorder point system calculates when to place an order for individual items. It does not classify or rank thousands of items by spending. Just-in-time is a delivery philosophy about receiving materials exactly when needed. It is not a classification tool. Economic order quantity calculates optimal order sizes for individual items, not how to prioritize across your entire inventory. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says classify inventory by annual dollar value, or focus attention on high-value items, that is ABC analysis. Quick recall hook. ABC equals A items get all the boss's care. 34. A bicycle parts distributor experiences unpredictable delivery delays from overseas suppliers that range from 1 to 3 weeks beyond the normal lead time. To prevent stockouts during these unexpected delays, the company maintains an extra cushion of inventory beyond what normal demand requires. Which inventory concept describes this extra cushion? A. Reorder point. B. Safety stock. C. Cycle stock. D. Pipeline inventory. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, B. Safety stock. Explanation. Option B is correct because safety stock is additional inventory held beyond normal expected needs, specifically to protect against uncertainty in demand fluctuations or supplier lead time variability, preventing stockouts during unexpected delays. Option A is incorrect because the reorder point is the inventory level that triggers a new order, and while it may incorporate safety stock in its calculation, it is not the term for the extra buffer inventory itself. Option C is incorrect because cycle stock is the portion of inventory that is consumed between regular replenishment orders during normal operations, not extra inventory, held as a protective buffer against unpredictable supply chain disruptions. Option D is incorrect because pipeline inventory refers to goods currently in transit between locations in the supply chain, not to extra stock held at the warehouse specifically as protection against uncertain and variable supplier delivery times. Safety stock is the extra cushion of inventory you keep just in case things go sideways. This bicycle parts distributor deals with overseas suppliers whose deliveries can be unpredictable, sometimes 1 week late, sometimes 3 weeks late. To make sure they do not run out of stock during those unexpected delays, the company holds extra inventory beyond normal demand requirements. That extra buffer is safety stock. It exists purely to absorb uncertainty, whether that comes from demand spikes or supplier delays. The reorder point is the inventory level that triggers a new order. Safety stock may be built into the reorder point calculation, but the reorder point is the trigger, not the buffer itself. Cycle stock is the inventory that gets consumed between regular replenishment orders during normal operations. It is your working inventory, not your emergency cushion. Pipeline inventory is goods currently in transit between locations. Those drill bits sitting on a cargo ship are pipeline inventory, not the extra stock kept at the warehouse as protection. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says extra inventory as a buffer, protection against uncertainty, or cushion for unpredictable delays, that is safety stock. Quick recall hook. Safety stock equals the safety net for surprises. 35. A retail chain realizes it is spending heavily on warehouse rent, insurance for stored goods, and losses from products that expire on shelves before they sell. The operations director wants to identify which category of inventory expense includes all of these costs so the company can target reductions. Which cost category covers these expenses? A. Ordering cost. B. Shortage costs. C. Holding costs. D. Setup costs. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, C, holding costs. Explanation, option C is correct because holding costs, also called carrying costs, include all expenses related to keeping inventory in storage such as warehousing, insurance, spoilage, obsolescence, and the opportunity cost of tied-up capital. Option A is incorrect because ordering costs are the expenses incurred each time a purchase order is placed, including paperwork, communication, and receiving inspection, not the ongoing costs of physically storing goods in a warehouse. Option B is incorrect because shortage costs arise when demand exceeds available stock, resulting in lost sales, backorder expenses, or damaged customer relationships, none of which relate to the cost of storing excess inventory on shelves. Option D is incorrect because setup costs are incurred when production equipment is changed over to produce a different product, and they relate to manufacturing preparation rather than to the expenses of warehousing and ensuring stored inventory. Holding costs, also called carrying costs, are all the expenses that come with keeping inventory in storage. This retail chain is spending money on warehouse rent, insurance for stored goods, and taking losses on products that expire before they sell. All of those fall under holding costs. Think of it this way: every item sitting on a shelf is costing you money just by being there. Rent, insurance, spoilage, obsolescence, and the opportunity cost of capital tied up in unsold goods. All holding costs. Ordering costs are the expenses of placing a purchase order, paperwork, communication, receiving inspection. Those hit every time you order, not while inventory sits in the warehouse. Shortage costs happen when you run out. Lost sales, backorder expenses, unhappy customers. The opposite problem from having too much inventory. Setup costs are incurred in manufacturing when you change over equipment to produce a different product. That is a production line expense, not a warehousing expense. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question mentions rent, insurance, spoilage, obsolescence, or the cost of storing inventory that is holding costs, quick recall hook. Holding costs equal the price of holding on to stuff. 36. A beverage company produces dozens of individual products, but needs to plan its overall production workforce and output levels for the next 12 months without getting into the details of each individual flavour or bottle size. Which planning approach operates at this broad combined product group level over a medium-term horizon? A. Aggregate planning. B. Master production scheduling. C. Material requirements planning. D. Shop floor control. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, A. Aggregate planning. Explanation. Option A is correct because aggregate planning determines overall production levels, workforce size, and inventory policies for a medium-term horizon, using broad product groups rather than planning each individual item or product variant separately. Option B is incorrect because master production scheduling breaks down the aggregate plan into specific quantities and timing for individual finished products, which is more detailed than the broad product group level described in this scenario. Option C is incorrect because material requirements planning determines the specific components, quantities, and timing needed to produce individual finished goods, operating at a much more granular level than broad aggregate product group planning. Option D is incorrect because shop floor control manages the day-to-day execution of production activities on the factory floor, tracking individual job progress and machine assignments rather than setting broad 12-month workforce and output plans. Aggregate planning operates at the big picture level. This beverage company makes dozens of products but needs to plan its overall production output, workforce size, and inventory policies for the next 12 months. It is not planning each individual flavour or bottle size. It is working with broad product groups. That is aggregate planning. It sets the overall direction for medium-term operations without getting buried in the details. Master production scheduling takes the aggregate plan and breaks it down into specific quantities and timing for each individual finished product. It is more detailed. It says exactly how many units of product X to make in week 3. That is a step below aggregate planning. Material requirements planning goes even deeper. It figures out which specific components are needed, how many, and when to build those individual finished products. Shop floor control is day-to-day execution, tracking which jobs are running on which machines right now. That's the most granular level, far below the 12-month horizon of aggregate planning. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says broad product groups, overall workforce and output, or medium-term planning horizon, that is aggregate planning. Quick recall hook. Aggregate equals all products grouped together. Big picture planning. 37. A frozen pizza factory experiences huge demand spikes during football season and sharp drops in summer. Instead of adjusting its workforce, the company produces at the same steady rate year-round, building up finished pizza inventory before football season and drawing it down during slow months. Which aggregate planning strategy does this represent? A. Chase strategy. B. Subcontracting strategy. C. Demand management strategy. D. Level strategy. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer: D. Level strategy. Explanation: option D is correct because a level strategy maintains a constant production rate and workforce size throughout the planning period, using inventory build-ups and drawdowns to absorb the differences between steady output and variable seasonal demand. Option A is incorrect because a chase strategy adjusts the production rate each period to exactly match demand, hiring and laying off workers as needed, rather than maintaining a steady output rate and absorbing fluctuations through inventory. Option B is incorrect because a subcontracting strategy uses external producers to handle demand that exceeds internal capacity, whereas this factory handles all production internally at a constant rate and manages variation through its own inventory. Option C is incorrect because a demand management strategy attempts to shift customer demand from peak periods to slower ones through pricing or promotions, whereas this factory accepts the existing demand pattern and manages it through steady production. The level strategy is about keeping things steady. This frozen pizza factory faces huge demand during football season and a sharp drop in summer, but instead of constantly adjusting the workforce, they produce at the same rate year-round. Before football season, they build up inventory. During summer, they draw it down. Same production rate, same workforce every month. That is a level strategy. The production line stays flat while inventory absorbs the demand swings. A chase strategy does the opposite. It adjusts the production rate every period to exactly match demand, hiring when demand goes up, laying off when it drops. This factory deliberately avoids that kind of workforce disruption. A subcontracting strategy farms out excess work to external companies during peak demand. This factory keeps everything in-house. A demand management strategy tries to shift customer behavior, using promotions or pricing to move demand from peak to slow periods. This factory accepts the demand pattern as is and manages it through inventory. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says constant production rate, steady workforce, and inventory build-ups and drawdowns, that is the level strategy. Quick recall hook. Level equals the production line stays even and level. 38. A landscaping company hires extra seasonal workers every spring when demand surges and lays them off each fall when business slows down. The company adjusts its workforce size each quarter to closely match the number of jobs it expects during that period. Which aggregate planning strategy does this workforce adjustment approach represent? A. Level strategy. B. Subcontracting strategy. C. Chase strategy. D. Demand smoothing strategy. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, C, chase strategy. Explanation. Option C is correct because a chase strategy matches production capacity to demand each period by adjusting the workforce size, hiring when demand rises, and reducing staff when demand falls, closely tracking actual workload changes. Option A is incorrect because a level strategy keeps the workforce and production rate constant regardless of demand fluctuations, using inventory or back orders to handle the difference rather than adjusting the number of employees each season. Option B is incorrect because a subcontracting strategy sends excess work to outside firms during peak periods rather than directly hiring and firing the company's own employees to match changing seasonal demand levels quarter by quarter. Option D is incorrect because demand smoothing attempts to shift customer demand from busy periods to slow ones using pricing incentives or promotions, rather than adjusting the company's own workforce size to follow the existing demand pattern. The chase strategy is the workforce adjustment approach. This landscaping company hires extra seasonal workers every spring when demand surges and lays them off each fall when business slows. The workforce changes quarter by quarter to match the workload. Production capacity chases demand. It goes up when demand goes up and drops when demand drops. That is the chase strategy. The level strategy keeps the workforce and production rate constant, using inventory to handle demand swings. This company is not building up inventory. It is physically changing how many people are on the payroll each quarter. A subcontracting strategy sends excess work to outside firms during peak periods. This company hires its own employees rather than farming work out externally. A demand smoothing strategy tries to flatten the demand curve by using pricing or promotions to shift customers from busy periods to slow ones. This company is not trying to change customer behavior. It is adjusting its own capacity to follow the existing demand pattern. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says hire and lay off to match demand, adjust workforce each period, or production follows demand, that is the chase strategy. Quick recall hook. Chase equals change workforce to chase demand. 39. A manager is creating an aggregate plan and wants to meet a short-term demand spike without hiring new permanent employees or building inventory. Instead, the manager asks current full-time employees to work additional hours beyond their normal shifts for the next 2 months. Which capacity option is being used in this plan? A. Subcontracting. B. Overtime. C. Hiring temporary workers. D. Building anticipation inventory. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, B. Overtime. Explanation. Option B is correct because overtime uses the existing workforce beyond their standard scheduled hours to temporarily increase output, avoiding the costs of hiring additional employees or the expense of carrying extra finished goods inventory. Option A is incorrect because subcontracting means sending work to an external company to handle the excess demand, whereas this manages keeping all production internal and simply asking current employees to work longer hours for 2 months. Option C is incorrect because hiring temporary workers brings in additional staff members to increase capacity. While this scenario specifically states the manager wants to avoid adding new employees and instead uses current staff working extra hours. Option D is incorrect because building anticipation. Inventory means producing goods in advance of a demand spike and storing them, which requires warehouse space and carrying costs rather than extending the work hours of the existing team. Overtime is one of the simplest capacity options available to a manager. There is a short-term demand spike, and the manager does not want to hire new permanent employees or build up inventory. The solution? Ask current full-time employees to work extra hours beyond their normal shifts for the next 2 months. That is overtime. You're squeezing more output from the existing workforce without adding headcount or carrying extra finished goods. Subcontracting means sending work to an external company. That is not what is happening. All production stays internal with the current team. Hiring temporary workers would bring in additional staff. The question specifically says the manager wants to avoid adding new employees. Building anticipation inventory means producing goods ahead of a demand spike and storing them. That requires warehouse space and carrying costs. The manager is deliberately avoiding the inventory route. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says extra hours, beyond normal shifts, or current employees work longer, without hiring anyone new, that is overtime. Quick recall hook. Overtime equals over the normal hours, same team. 40. A toy company finishes its aggregate plan for the holiday season and now needs to translate those broad production targets into a week-by-week schedule, showing exactly how many units of each specific toy model to produce. Which planning document serves as the bridge between the aggregate plan and detailed component-level planning? A. Bill of materials. B. Purchase requisition. C. Shop floor dispatch list. D. Master production schedule. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, D. Master production schedule. Explanation. Option D is correct because the master production schedule converts aggregate plan targets into specific production quantities and timing for each individual finished product, serving as the direct link between aggregate planning and detailed scheduling. Option A is incorrect because a bill of materials lists all the raw materials, parts and sub-assemblies needed to produce one unit of a finished product, but it does not schedule when or how many finished units to produce each week. Option B is incorrect because a purchase requisition is an internal document requesting the procurement department to buy materials or services, and it does not schedule production quantities for individual finished product models week by week. Option C is incorrect because a shop floor dispatch list is a daily priority list telling workers which jobs to run next on specific machines, operating at a much more granular execution level than translating aggregate targets into product schedules. The Master Production Schedule, or MPS, is the bridge between the big picture and the details. The toy company has finished its aggregate plan for the holiday season. Now it needs to translate those broad production targets into a week-by-week schedule, showing exactly how many units of each specific toy model to produce. That is the MPS. It takes the aggregate plan's broad numbers and breaks them into specific finished product quantities and timing. It sits right between aggregate planning above it and material requirements planning below it. A bill of materials lists all the raw materials and components needed to build one unit of a product. It defines what goes into a product, not when or how many finished units to produce. A purchase requisition is an internal document asking the procurement team to buy something. It is a paperwork step, not a production schedule. A shop floor dispatch list is a daily priority list telling workers which jobs to run next on specific machines. That is execution level detail, far more granular than a weekly finished product schedule. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says translate aggregate targets into specific product quantities and weekly timing, that is the master production schedule. Quick recall hook. MPS equals the master plan for specific products. 41. A bicycle manufacturer knows it will produce 500 mountain bikes next month based on confirmed orders. The production manager needs a system that can determine exactly which components, how many of each, and precisely when they must be available to meet that production schedule. Which planning system performs this function? A. Aggregate planning. B. Economic order quantity. C. Material requirements planning. D. Reorder point system. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, C. Material requirements planning. Explanation. Option C is correct because material requirements planning uses the production schedule, bill of materials, and inventory records to calculate exactly which components are needed, in what quantities, and when they must be ordered. Option A is incorrect because aggregate planning determines broad production and workforce levels for product groups over several months, not the specific component quantities and timing needed to assemble individual finished products like mountain bikes. Option B is incorrect because economic order quantity calculates the cost minimizing order size for a single item based on demand and cost assumptions, and it does not coordinate multiple component schedules tied to a finished product production plan. Option D is incorrect because the reorder point system triggers orders for individual items when stock drops to a set level based on usage rate, and it does not coordinate dependent component needs based on a master production schedule. Material Requirements Planning, MRP, is the system that answers three critical questions at once. What components do I need? How many of each? And when do they have to be here? This bicycle manufacturer has 500 mountain bikes scheduled for next month. Each bike needs a frame, 2 wheels, handlebars, a seat, brakes, gears, dozens of parts. MRP takes the production schedule, cross-references the bill of materials to see exactly what goes into each bike, checks inventory records to see what is already on hand or on order, and then calculates precisely what still needs to be ordered and when. Aggregate planning works at a much higher level. It sets broad production and workforce targets for entire product groups over several months. It does not drill down into individual component quantities for a specific product. Economic order quantity calculates the cost minimizing order size for a single item. It is a standalone formula, not a system that coordinates the timing and quantities of dozens of dependent components tied to a finished product schedule. The reorder point system triggers an order for one item when stock drops to a preset level. It works for independent demand items, but it cannot coordinate the dependent relationships between components that all need to arrive in sync for assembly. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says which components, how many, and when, or describes planning tied to a production schedule for a finished product, that is MRP. Quick recall hook, MRP equals the master recipe for parts. 42. Before running its material requirements planning system, a factory needs a document that lists every single raw material, part and subassembly required to build one complete unit of its finished product, along with the quantity of each component needed. Which document provides this structured component breakdown? A. Master production schedule. B. Inventory status record. C. Purchase order. D. Bill of materials. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, D. Bill of materials. Explanation. Option D is correct because a bill of materials is a structured list showing every component, subassembly, and raw material needed to produce one unit of a finished product, including the exact quantity required for each item. Option A is incorrect because the master production schedule specifies when and how many units of each finished product will be produced, but it does not list the individual components and their quantities needed to build a single unit. Option B is incorrect because an inventory status record shows current stock on hand, scheduled receipts, and lead times for each item, but it does not define the structural breakdown of which components make up a finished product. Option C is incorrect because a purchase order is a document sent to a supplier authorizing the delivery of specific goods at an agreed price, not a breakdown of every part and material needed to assemble one unit of a product. The bill of materials, or BOM, is the recipe card for a finished product. Before MRP can calculate anything, it needs to know exactly what goes into one unit of the product. The BOM provides that breakdown, every single raw material, part and subassembly, along with the quantity of each component required. Think of it like a recipe for a cake. 2 cups of flour, 3 eggs, 1 cup of sugar. The BOM does the same thing for manufacturing. 1 frame, 2 wheels, 4 brake pads, 26 spokes per wheel. Without the BOM, MRP has no idea what to order. The master production schedule tells you when and how many finished products to produce. It is the production calendar, not the component list. An inventory status record shows what's currently on hand and on the order. It tracks stock levels, but it does not define what components make up a product. A purchase order is a document sent to a supplier to authorize a delivery. It is a transaction document, not a structural breakdown of a product. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says list of all components, structured breakdown, or what is needed to build one unit, that is the bill of materials. Quick recall hook: BOM equals the blueprint of materials for one product. 43. The demand for bicycle tyres at a factory depends entirely on how many complete bicycles are scheduled for production next month. The tyres are not ordered based on independent customer purchases, but are driven by the parent product's production plan. Which type of demand describes the relationship of these tyres to the finished bicycle? A. Dependent demand. B. Independent demand. C. Seasonal demand. D. Cyclical demand. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, A. Dependent demand. Explanation: option A is correct because dependent demand means the need for a component is derived directly from the production schedule of its parent product. So tyre quantities depend entirely on how many bicycles are planned for assembly. Option B is incorrect because independent demand is driven directly by end customers or the external market, such as when consumers buy replacement tyres individually, not when tyre orders are calculated from a bicycle production schedule. Option C is incorrect because seasonal demand refers to predictable fluctuations in purchasing patterns tied to certain times of the year, which describes a demand timing pattern rather than the structural relationship between a component and its parent product. Option D is incorrect because cyclical demand describes long-term economic fluctuations that affect purchasing patterns over years, not the direct dependency relationship between a component's need and the production quantity of its finished parent product. Dependent demand is a concept that separates MRP thinking from regular inventory management. The demand for bicycle tyres at this factory is not based on customers walking in and buying tyres. It is based entirely on how many complete bicycles are scheduled for production. If the factory plans to build 500 bikes, it needs 1,000 tyres, 2 per bike. The tyre demand depends on the parent product's production plan. That is dependent demand. Independent demand is driven by end customers and the external market. If a bike shop sells replacement tyres directly to cyclists, those tyres have independent demand. The shop does not know exactly how many customers will show up. But inside the factory, tyre demand is calculated from the bike production schedule. Seasonal demand describes predictable patterns tied to times of year, like ice cream selling more in summer. That is a timing pattern, not a structural relationship between a component and its parent product. Cyclical demand refers to long-term economic waves over multiple years. Recessions, booms, again nothing to do with the direct dependency between a part and the product it goes into. Here's a WGU 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says a component's demand is driven by or derived from the production schedule of a parent product, that is dependent demand. Quick recall hook: dependent demand depends on the parent product. 44. A growing manufacturer currently uses separate software systems for production planning, accounting, human resources, and customer orders that do not communicate with each other. The company wants a single integrated system that connects all business functions and shares data in real time. Which system type should they implement? A. Material requirements planning. B. Enterprise resource planning. C. Master production schedule software. D. Supply chain management platform. Do you know the answer? Form. Correct answer, B. Enterprise resource planning. Explanation. Option B is correct because enterprise resource planning integrates all major business functions, including production, finance, human resources and sales, into one unified database and software system with real-time data sharing across departments. Option A is incorrect because material requirements planning focuses specifically on calculating component needs, quantities, and timing for production, and it does not integrate human resources, accounting, and customer management into a single, unified system. Option C is incorrect because master production schedule software manages the timing and quantities of specific finished product production, which covers only one function within operations and does not integrate all business departments into a single platform. Option D is incorrect because a supply chain management platform focuses on coordinating the flow of materials and information between suppliers, manufacturers, and distributors, but it does not integrate internal functions like human resources and accounting. Enterprise Resource Planning, ERP, is the system that ties everything together. This manufacturer has separate software for production planning, accounting, human resources, and customer orders. None of them talk to each other. Data gets entered multiple times, reports do not match, and nobody has a single source of truth. ERP fixes that by integrating all major business functions into one unified database and software system with real-time data sharing. When a sales order is placed, production knows immediately. Inventory adjusts automatically, accounting records the transaction, and HR can plan labour needs, all from one system. Material requirements planning handles component scheduling for production. It is one function within a broader ERP system, but it does not integrate HR, accounting, or sales. Master production schedule software manages timing and quantities for specific finished products. Again, one piece of the puzzle, not the whole picture. A supply chain management platform coordinates the flow of materials between suppliers, manufacturers, and distributors. It focuses on the external supply chain, not on integrating internal departments like HR and accounting. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says single integrated system, connects all business functions, or real-time data sharing across departments, that is ERP. Quick recall hook. ERP equals everything running on one platform. 45. A production planner preparing to run the material requirements planning system needs to know how many units of each component are currently sitting in the warehouse and how many are already on order from suppliers with expected delivery dates. Which MRP input provides this current stock and scheduled receipt information? A. Bill of materials. B. Master production schedule. C. Aggregate plan. D. Inventory status record. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, D. Inventory status record. Explanation. Option D is correct because the inventory status record tracks current on-hand quantities, already scheduled receipts from suppliers, and lead times for every component, giving MRP the stock position data it needs to calculate net requirements. Option A is incorrect because the bill of materials defines the structural breakdown of components needed to build one finished product, but it does not track how many of those components are currently in the warehouse or on order. Option B is incorrect because the master production schedule specifies when and how many finished products will be produced, but it does not contain information about current component stock levels or pending supplier deliveries. Option C is incorrect because the aggregate plan sets broad production and workforce targets for product groups over several months, operating at a much higher level than tracking individual component stock quantities and supplier delivery schedules. MRP needs 3 key inputs to do its job, and this question tests one of them: the inventory status record. The production planner needs to know how many units of each component are currently in the warehouse and how many are already on order from suppliers with expected delivery dates. That is the inventory status record. It tracks on-hand quantities, scheduled receipts, and lead times for every component. Without it, MRP would order parts you already have or miss parts you thought were coming, but are not. The bill of materials defines what components go into one unit of a finished product. It tells you the structure, one frame, 2 wheels, but it does not tell you how many frames are sitting in the warehouse right now. The master production schedule tells you when and how many finished products to produce. It drives the MRP calculation, but it does not contain stock level information for individual components. The aggregate plan sets broad workforce and production targets for product groups. It operates at a much higher level than tracking whether you have enough brake pads for next Tuesday's production run. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question asks about current stock on hand, scheduled receipts, or lead times for components feeding into MRP, that is the inventory status record. Quick recall hook, ISR equals I know what's in stock right now. 46. A startup company is launching an entirely new product category with no historical sales data available anywhere in the market. The planning team decides to gather structured opinions from a panel of industry experts who submit independent estimates through multiple anonymous rounds until their forecasts converge. Which forecasting method is being used? A. Delphi method. B. Moving average. C. Exponential smoothing. D. Trend projection. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, A. Delphi method. Explanation. Option A is correct because the Delphi method collects expert opinions through multiple anonymous rounds, with summarized feedback shared between rounds until the group reaches a convergent consensus forecast without direct confrontation. Option B is incorrect because moving average calculates a forecast by averaging actual demand from several recent past periods, which requires historical data that does not exist for this entirely new product category being launched. Option C is incorrect because exponential smoothing is a quantitative technique that weights recent historical demand data more heavily than older data to generate forecasts, and it cannot function without past sales figures to process. Option D is incorrect because trend projection uses historical data points to fit a trend line and extend it into the future, which is impossible when no prior sales history exists for the product category being forecasted. The Delphi method is the go-to qualitative forecasting technique when you have zero historical data. This startup is launching a completely new product category, nothing like it has ever been sold before. There are no past sales figures to crunch, so the planning team gathers a panel of industry experts and runs a structured process. Each expert submits an independent forecast anonymously. The results are summarized and shared back with the group. Then each expert revises their estimate based on the group's feedback. This repeats over multiple rounds until the forecasts converge toward a consensus. No face-to-face debate, no groupthink, just structured anonymous rounds. Moving average needs historical data. It averages past periods. No history, no moving average. Exponential smoothing also requires historical data to apply declining weights to past observations. No sales records means nothing to weight. Trend projection fits a line to historical data points and extends it forward. With no data points, there is no line to extend. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says no historical data, expert opinions, anonymous rounds, or convergent consensus, that is the Delphi method. Quick recall hook. Delphi equals data-free. Experts lead the prediction. Hidden identity. 47. A grocery store manager wants to forecast next week's milk sales by averaging the actual sales from the past 4 weeks. This approach gives equal weight to each of those 4 weeks and drops the oldest week whenever a new week's actual data becomes available. Which quantitative forecasting method does this describe? A. Exponential smoothing. B. Delphi method. C. Simple moving average. D. Regression analysis. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, C. Simple moving average. Explanation. Option C is correct because a simple moving average forecasts future demand by calculating the arithmetic mean of actual demand values from a fixed number of recent periods, weighting each period equally in the calculation. Option A is incorrect because exponential smoothing assigns different weights to past data points, with the most recent period receiving the heaviest weight, rather than giving each of the last 4 weeks an equal share in the calculation. Option B is incorrect because the Delphi method is a qualitative approach that gathers structured expert opinions through anonymous rounds, and it does not involve averaging numerical sales data from recent historical periods at all. Option D is incorrect because regression analysis identifies a mathematical relationship between demand and one or more independent variables like price or advertising spending, which is structurally different from simply averaging recent weekly sales figures. Simple moving average is the most basic quantitative forecasting method. This grocery store manager wants to predict next week's milk sales by averaging the last 4 weeks of actual sales. Week 1 sold 100 units, Week 2 sold 120, Week 3 sold 90, Week 4 sold 110. Average them equally, and that is your forecast. Each week gets the same weight. When a new week's actual data comes in, it replaces the oldest week, and the window slides forward. That is why it's called a moving average. Exponential smoothing also uses past data, but assigns different weights. Recent data gets more emphasis, older data gets less. The key distinction is that simple moving average treats every period in the window equally. No period matters more than another. The Delphi method is qualitative. Expert opinions through anonymous rounds. It does not involve averaging any numerical sales data. Regression analysis builds a mathematical relationship between demand and one or more independent variables like price or advertising. That is structurally different from simply averaging the last few weeks of sales. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says average past periods, equal weight to each period, and drops the oldest period, that is simple moving average. Quick recall hook, SMA equals same weight, moving window, average. 48. An ice cream shop sees sales surge every summer and decline sharply every winter, with this same pattern repeating year after year. The owner wants to account for this predictable, recurring fluctuation when building the annual sales forecast. Which demand pattern component describes this repeating yearly cycle? A. Trend component. B. Random variation. C. Cyclical component. D. Seasonal component. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, D. Seasonal component. Explanation. Option D is correct because a seasonal component represents a predictable, regularly repeating pattern of demand increase or decrease tied to specific times of the year, such as the summer surge and winter decline in ice cream sales. Option A is incorrect because a trend component reflects a long-term general upward or downward movement in demand over many years, not a within-year pattern that repeats at the same time each year, like summer and winter cycles. Option B is incorrect because random variation represents unpredictable, irregular fluctuations in demand that have no identifiable pattern or cause, unlike the predictable yearly summer and winter cycle described in this ice cream scenario. Option C is incorrect because a cyclical component refers to long-term wave-like fluctuations in demand driven by broad economic conditions over periods of several years, not a predictable pattern that repeats within the same calendar year. Demand pattern components show up in forecasting questions, and the seasonal component is the most intuitive. This ice cream shop sees the same cycle every year. Sales surge in summer, drop in winter, surge again next summer, drop again next winter. It is predictable. It repeats within the same calendar year. That recurring within-year pattern is the seasonal component of demand. A trend component is a long-term general direction over many years. If the ice cream shop's overall sales grow 3% every year for a decade, that upward trajectory is the trend. It is not the summer-winter swing. It is the multi-year direction. Random variation is the unpredictable noise. One week's sales spike because of a surprise heatwave, or drop because of a road closure near the shop. No pattern, no predictability. That is a random variation. A cyclical component is a long-term wave-like fluctuation driven by broad economic conditions, recessions, expansions, playing out over several years. It is not tied to seasons or the calendar year. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question describes a demand pattern that repeats at the same time every year, summer surges, holiday spikes, winter drops, that is the seasonal component. Quick recall hook: seasonal equals same time, same pattern, every single year. 49. A retail chain generates monthly demand forecasts and wants to monitor whether those forecasts are consistently too high or too low over time. If the errors are mostly in one direction over many periods, the model has a persistent directional problem. Which forecast evaluation concept specifically detects this type of consistent overestimation or underestimation pattern? A. Mean absolute deviation. B. Forecast bias. C. Tracking signal. D. Standard error. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, B. Forecast bias. Explanation: option B is correct because forecast bias measures whether forecast errors consistently skew in one direction over time, indicating systematic overestimation or underestimation that signals the forecasting model needs adjustment or recalibration. Option A is incorrect because mean absolute deviation measures the average size of forecast errors regardless of their direction, telling you how far off forecasts are on average, but not whether errors consistently lean high or low. Option C is incorrect because a tracking signal compares cumulative forecast error to mean absolute deviation to flag when a model may be going off track, but the underlying concept of consistent directional error itself is specifically called bias. Option D is incorrect because standard error measures the statistical dispersion of forecast errors around the mean, indicating overall precision, but not specifically whether those errors are systematically tilted toward over-forecasting or under-forecasting. Forecast bias is about direction, not size. This retail chain wants to know whether its forecasts are consistently too high or too low over time. If the forecast overshoots actual demand month after month, or undershoots it month after month, that persistent, one-directional pattern is bias. The forecasting model is systematically leaning one way. Mean absolute deviation, MAD, measures the average size of forecast errors, but it ignores the direction. It tells you your forecasts are off by 50 units on average, but it does not tell you whether they are consistently too high or consistently too low. A tracking signal compares cumulative error to MAD to flag when a model might be drifting. It uses bias as part of its calculation, but the tracking signal itself is the monitoring tool. Bias is the underlying concept it detects. Standard error measures how spread out the errors are around the mean. It tells you about precision and variability, not about whether errors are systematically tilted in one direction. Here's a WGUC 215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says consistently too high or too low, persistent directional error, or systematic overestimation or underestimation, that is forecast bias. Quick recall hook: bias equals one direction, bad calibration. 50. A company has been in business for 10 years and has reliable historical sales data. The planning team wants a forecasting method that weighs last month's actual sales more heavily than older months, while still accounting for the general history. Which quantitative method applies declining weights to older data automatically? A. Exponential smoothing. B. Simple moving average. C. Delphi method. D. Seasonal index. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, A. Exponential smoothing. Explanation: option A is correct because exponential smoothing automatically applies heavier weight to the most recent demand data and progressively less weight to older observations, making forecasts more responsive to recent changes in demand patterns. Option B is incorrect because simple moving average gives equal weight to every period included in the calculation window, treating last month's data the same as the oldest month, rather than emphasizing recent information more heavily. Option C is incorrect because the Delphi method relies on structured expert judgment gathered through anonymous survey rounds, not on weighting historical sales data, and it is a qualitative technique rather than a quantitative one. Option D is incorrect because a seasonal index adjusts a baseline forecast to account for predictable seasonal fluctuations within the year, but it is not a standalone method that applies declining weights to progressively older historical demand data. Exponential smoothing is the forecasting method that automatically gives more weight to recent data and less weight to older data. This company has 10 years of reliable sales history. The planning team wants the most recent month to matter more than data from 2 years ago, but they still want the older history to have some influence. Exponential smoothing does that through a smoothing constant, usually called alpha. A higher alpha means more weight on recent data, faster reactions to changes. A lower alpha means the forecast is smoother and less reactive. The declining weight happens automatically. You do not manually assign weights to each period. Simple moving average gives equal weight to every period in the window. Last month counts exactly the same as 3 months ago. That's the opposite of what this company wants. The Delphi method is qualitative, expert opinions through anonymous rounds. It does not use historical sales data at all. A seasonal index adjusts a baseline forecast for predictable seasonal patterns. It handles the timing of demand swings within the year, but it is not a method that applies declining weights to progressively older data. Here's a WGU C215 OA exam tip for you. When the question says recent data weighted more heavily, declining weights, or more responsive to recent changes, that is exponential smoothing. Quick recall hook. Exponential smoothing equals recent data is the elephant in the room. Older data shrinks.
You have reached the end of our first question set. For the free complete exam preparation, visit our website, link in the description, where you find thousands more practice questions and comprehensive study guides. Thanks for studying with us today. See you in the next video.